Good Vibes Only is here to take you on a journey to discover the weird and wacky world of wellness. It's brought to you by the globally renowned skin and wellness expert Marie Reynolds, who holds over 36 years of experience within the skin and well-being industry. Each week, Marie shares her own holistic lifestyle hacks and chats to other leading wellness experts to find out their good vibe story, discussing how they deal with day-to-day stress, anxiety, sleep, and skin issues. Listen in as Marie explores why, when it comes to our health and wellness, we need to look beyond the linear, question the norm, and think outside the box.
I'm joined here today by a gorgeous human who I came across on TikTok, and I was completely enraptured by him. As soon as I heard his lovely voice and saw what he was doing, I thought, I've got to have him on the podcast. So I'm going to let him introduce himself. He's known as the He Witch on TikTok. So if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, Marie. Thank you so much for having me on. This was really unexpected, but I'm really excited. So I am a solitary practitioner of witchcraft, and I kind of revamped my involvement in witchcraft and decided, or was guided, to look at TikTok as a vehicle and as a form of connection.
Wonderful.
And here we are. This is proof of that connection. This is proof that there is a whole community of practitioners that are brought together via a social media platform.
So when people talk about witchcraft, they immediately think about dark magic, black magic, the occult and things like that. And it's really important for me to clarify that there's a duality in a nature in everything that we do.
Absolutely.
People know me for the Witch of the West End. I deal with the moon cycles, the elements, the stars, deities and things like that. And it's a very personal thing. I have a separate subscription on my Instagram. But for you, what does witchcraft mean to you?
Witchcraft for me is about exploring my capabilities and my potential. I think it's about self-exploration and about knowing the self, but it's also about allowing the self to engage with the universe, deities, herbalism, candle magic, whatever you are engaging in, you can allow yourself to be guided to that medium. The myths and the dogma that surrounds witchcraft, particularly in the United Kingdom, but also across the world, around, you being devil worshippers or you're a source of evil, has been perpetrated by people who were scared.
Exactly, yeah.
And one of my favourite health writers or nursing writers is Florence Nightingale, and one of her most wonderful quotes is that nothing good comes from fear.
Yeah, exactly. And being uneducated in the craft, we know that many, many, many women and men actually lost their lives through the witch trials. And it was usually through women that were either midwives, herbalists, the wise women, and a lot of them were landowners that the patriarchy didn't want them to have the land. And so there's a lot of miscommunication, fear-driven, and getting back to what actually witchcraft is. It's the cultivation of energy of all living things, isn't it? It's the cultivation of your intention and your energy. So how did you first become interested in the craft?
Many years ago, as a teenager, kind of 13, 14, I met up with my best friend, who sadly is now passed. I describe her as my Anam Cara, so she's a part of my soul.
Yeah.
And we became interested in witchcraft together. And her mum was a practicing witch. And we're talking kind of mid-80s here. We were encouraged to explore that side of our curiosity there was no internet then. So we were reliant on I don't know whether you remember it, a publication called Prediction. I think it's still going.
Yeah.
And that was eagerly awaited. It was a monthly, and it was like, oh, we've got Prediction. But we had to keep it on the lowdown.
Yeah.
We were both at a Catholic school.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Yes. So we were literally keeping it on the lowdown and did so for kind of the rest of our lives, really. But we did some basic ritual craft, kind of learned how to manage that safely with regards to protection, regards to grounding, regards to closing down, etc. And yeah, that's where it all began. I have been in and out of the craft for 30 years.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of witches do that. It's kind of like you go back to what you have as a primal urge to be part of, and then life takes over. You know, the times that we live in take over, and then you come back. And moving here closed a circle for me, because I met my husband here in the next village 13 years ago. And we had no plans to move back into this vicinity. But this house is literally in the epicenter of the Lancashire Witch.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to ask you, is there any particular folklore or spiritual traditions where you are?
It's an interesting spot. So I live between a triple crossroads and a double crossroads, literally.
Hekate. So, yeah.
Literally divided by about 200 feet. And there has been a church on this site since the 12th century. There have also been stone circles here.
For our listeners that don't understand what the stone circles are and who Hekate is, elaborate a little bit more on that.
Yeah, so stone circles are ancient structures that were built by our ancestors to act as centre points for honour and worship and ritual for the deities that they revered and the deities that they worked within. So druids have often been sort of connected with stone circles, but also other kind of religious practice.
Yeah, most famous being Stonehenge.
Stonehenge, absolutely. But they're not all on this massive scale that Stonehenge is. They can be very simple, and often were very simple, because what was only, you know, you're talking about very small communities with limited access to kind of cart these things around and get these things set up. But they were set up by the community as the spiritual centre, a revered place. And there is a history of stone circles being scattered around this area. And literally there is the scars of a stone circle. And I say that kind of metaphorically, because unfortunately it was destroyed just literally betwixt these two crossroads. So this is a very, very magical space. There's a 16th century church here, which is a beautiful building. And I remember when I first came here, I was talking to the vicar, and we were sort of sussing each other out. And he said to me, "Do you come to church?" I live next door to it. I overlook the graveyard. And I said, I didn't come out of the
the witch closet.
But I said, I have very eclectic taste in spirituality. And he said, I can see that. And he was a lovely soul. And he said, there was a reason the Christians built a church here. So it has this incredible history and this incredible energy. So Hekate is an interesting deity. She's the embodiment of the triple goddess. When you see a symbol, which is everywhere these days, of
the moons, two
crescent moons and a full moon, that is a symbol for Hekate, and that represents the maiden, the mother, and the crone. And because we have been
programmed,
or the predominant information that we've been given over the last sort of 1,000 years has been around
Christianity
and patriarchal constructs of that.
Yeah.
The goddess is seen as a mothering figure.
Yeah.
A gentle, kind of loving, giving,
Protecting it, yeah.
Think Virgin Mary, think Saint Teresa, all these kind of wonderful protective deities.
Yeah.
Hekate is a bit more realistic in that she will show you and guide you in what you need to do, but it won't necessarily be the most comfortable of rides. And she will get you to the place you need to be, but not necessarily in the way that you think you're going to get there. So it won't be a yellow brick road and sunshine and lollipops. You're going to have to do some work. You're going to have to work with her.
But this comes back down to shadows and shadow work that you have to do. People automatically think that is to do with like devil, but it isn't. It's the dark spaces within yourself. It's literally self-reflection of really uncomfortable places that you need to go, that you need to reflect or maybe work on to improve yourself and improve your surroundings, improve your journey. So do you use any other deities?
I am very eclectic. I wasn't lying when I said that. I use Hanuman.
Yeah.
Who is a Hindu god. He's a monkey god, and he's the god of. He's a bit naughty, and he's a bit mischievous, but he's also very good at protection, divination, and he's often portrayed as a warrior.
Yeah,
he ties in well with the energy of Hekate. It's that kind of strong
duality,
duality, and that guidance that I think I get from both those deities.
And I just want to also just touch on something. I want to make it clear about religion and witchcraft.
Yeah.
There's no dogma, so you can actually be a Christian and still practice.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the difference is where there is religion and there's control and there are deities in religion that you have to abide, otherwise you get punished or you will be a sinner. Whereas within deity work, you are literally drawing on their characteristics to actually guide you to a better place. So it's almost like, for example, Neptune is worked with a lot of emotional work. Then you have like Hekate for crossroads or protection. Obviously, Lilith, Mother Lilith, is a very powerful female character that is very protective and also works within the dark moon, the new moon.
Lilith, for me, represents emancipation.
Yeah.
I would love to see, in fact, I think it's happening because you see this fourth wave feminism coming forward. Not the destructive kind of feminism that we have seen, but this very empowering, very flourishing, really quite warrior-like.
Yeah, exactly. Like Apasa was sort of like the female Amazon warrior who was one of the first deities of Ephesus before Artemis. But Lilith is very, very misunderstood character. As soon as you mention Lilith, people that know, they think, oh my God, she's a demon. She's the demon that ate babies. And actually, she's nothing like that. That is just a narrative that's been told, again, because she was a very powerful woman. But let's get back onto different practices. How would you describe your witchcraft? Do you go out foraging? Do you enjoy foraging? And
there's two elements to my craft. One of them is intuitive.
Yep.
And I am intuitive from kind of a herbal, floral perspective. So I do go out foraging. I do go out trying to find things. I am by no means a botanist. So sometimes I am drawn to stuff. I haven't got a clue what it is. I'll pick it and then I'll come and find out what it is and what I need to use it for.
Yeah.
So that trusting that level of intuition is a real kind of hark back to what our ancestors would have done.
Yeah.
They'd have looked at something and thought, this is what I need. I'll try this.
But that's again coming back to, I think, how we've been controlled over the years and that our intuitive nature has been almost dulled down. Obviously, we know that saying, you go with your gut instinct. But actually, the best thing to do is to just get yourself out in nature. Look at what plants are around you. Look at what nature provides. Even if you think something's a weed, it's not. So the intuitive side, do you connect with spirit?
Yes. So I trained as a psychic medium. And I trained with the Spiritualist Church in the UK.
Right, yeah.
I'm a little more fluid with my mediumship now, so I'm a bit more kind of open and a bit more receptive. But I think from a practice perspective, I use some of the more structured ritualistic practices to enhance my own intuitive practice. So, for example, what Wicca can offer you is a really practical way to set yourself up. So sometimes I will work a ritual from spontaneity because I can feel that I need to do it.
Yeah.
If, for instance, I'm doing some new moon work or I'm working for somebody with regards to whatever ritual they need me to do for them, or I'm working on behalf of somebody, then that has a lot more, that takes a lot more planning.
So when you are working with spirit, do you do ancestral healing or work with deities like Isis, or is it just purely that you're using yourself as a channel?
I'm essentially using myself as a channel. So I have a spirit guide that I've had essentially all my life. And he is a monk, and he terrified everybody at home because I was talking to him in the middle of the night. I was seeing him. He was around an awful lot. And as we do with children, we kind of rationalize it as an imaginary friend. And Peter's been with me for forever. He is very funny. We kind of had this idea of monks and the spirit world as being sort of ominous things. And he is the most lovely, warm, understanding, sensible, and sometimes a little bit crazy. And he's been with me forever, really, and has been part of my development of my craft and my intuition, because he understands from the time in which he was here, I feel the persecution that's gone on.
When you say the persecution that's gone on, what are you talking about there? Personally?
Well, personally, and also with regards to witches and the misunderstanding of what witchcraft is. And I think he connects with me as a way of almost of atonement for that. He's obviously from a Christian tradition.
Yeah.
Get so much of any spiritual practice is very intuitive.
So what does a typical day of practice look like for you?
I generally wake up with the sunrise without an alarm. I will kind of lie there looking through the window at the sunrise, kind of welcoming that and thinking, another day, what can we do with intention? What's going to happen today? But I try and leave my sleep space in a really positive way, because I think that's important.
Absolutely, yeah.
If you drag yourself out of bed, you need to stop doing that. I know it's hard to go and brush your teeth even, but just having that spark of positivity and possibility at the beginning of the day is really important for me. I then light my altar and I spend maybe 5-10 minutes just grounding, connecting myself, opening myself up into possibilities for the day. And that's kind of the start to the day. There's nothing flash. I'm not burning incense. I don't wear anything particularly special. And then sometimes it's a day of work, real life.
Yeah.
If I am building up to a ritual, I will then set time aside to focus on what I need to do to prepare for that.
Yeah.
Now, that might be a simple thing like sorting out my herbs that I need for that ritual, or getting some oils together that I need for that ritual, gathering stuff. Spending time with my Book of Shadows is a really nice way to prep.
Yeah.
You know, do some artwork around what you're doing, put some intention, because that is practice.
So Book of Shadows is also known as like a grimoire or your own spell book. And that is so personal to me. I've been writing mine for sort of like quite some time. And it's just so lovely when I look back. I have two. I have one that's literally almost like a tell-all or what things are, and then I've got my other one, which are my rituals and my petitions. But that in itself is a ritual, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it really is, because you are laying down in ink or in image, whichever way you work. I think what kind of blocks people from making the Book of Shadows or the grimoire into something personal is how it looks.
Yeah, but the whole point of the Book of Shadows or your grimoire is that it was your own personal thing. I mean, nobody should really touch your Book of Shadows. So do you follow the wheel of the year or other seasonal cycles? Explain
Yeah.
to the listeners what the wheel of the year is and what Sabbats are and how you connect your practice with that.
So the Wheel of the Year is essentially a calendar for pagan practice that we use to divide seasonal ritual. And what we are actually doing, if you look at a Wheel of the Year, it's a very nature-based calendar.
Yeah.
So it looks at sleep, hibernation, awakening, growth, and harvest. And in each one of those seasons, we have sabbats. And we also have ebats, which are the bits in between where we use the moon as guidance. But the Wheel of the Year, without kind of littering it, because I think that automatically puts people in a place where they're thinking, I've got to remember all this. If you miss a sabbat, nothing bad is going to happen. If you miss a new moon and you are working a ritual that you feel should be timed to a moon phase, or you feel should be timed to an ebat or a sabbat, then yes, you need to do that working. You're being guided towards that working. Witchcraft is not prescriptive. It's not about slavishly following a
Ritual, yeah.
It is about your interpretation, and it's also open to what you've got available to you. You know, if you've got a £2 pack of emergency candles,
Yeah.
they're good enough.
Yeah. This is another thing. For me, I'm quite mindful in all of the things that I get. And I noticed as well with you go into either charity shops or you go to antique shops.
Absolutely.
I personally want to make sure that I've got something that has meaning, or there's something that I've like invested in for that ritual. However, you don't have to do that. Years ago, they didn't have all different coloured candles that represented everything. You know, white has all of the colours in that spectrum. So, you know, as long as you use your intention for what that candle is for. But witchcraft is not about conditioning. It's a very personal involvement. It's an evolution that you can dip in and dip out of. And what I love about the wheel is that all of the things that are based with the cycles of the moon and the cycles of the earth and the cycles of the seasons, the Christian calendar is taken from, like Yule, Easter, all of these things. They're all based on the wheel of the year.
And in part that was done to ease the transition from paganism.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
But for converts, that would be converts, let's call it something that they'll kind of recognise, but it isn't what it actually is.
We haven't abolished.
We've adopted. And it's really interesting because that tension between organised faith and witchcraft and paganism exists because there has been so much plagiarism.
Yeah, exactly. So do you craft your own tools or charms or?
Yes, I'm a bit of a maker. I am of the generation where, you know, you had a craft drawer.
Yeah.
You could spend hundreds, if not thousands of pounds setting up your altar. I like to use stuff that I might find. I found a beautiful piece of yew on a walk that just arrived. Now, that has not just been found, that's been placed for me to find. And I thought, oh, that's really beautiful. And then when I picked it up, all the bark literally just fell off it. It was like it had been sanded. So this has been given to me to use in practice. And so I was thinking about wands and thinking about buying one and looking online and looking at some of the beautiful things that people make, which they do. And I just thought, no, this will do me.
What advice would you give to somebody who wants to start off their practice or their interest in the craft?
I think for you and I, our journeys, and I'm making an assumption about your journey now, but I think they've been very organic and they've grown with us as we've grown older and we've matured. And I think the internet is a wonderful thing. I think there is a great witch community out there, but also just be careful.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that in a oh, be careful. I'm just saying choose for yourself what you would want for others. And I think you will just be mindful, as we've said, this is not about being enslaved to a dogma. This is about discovering your potential as a practitioner and your potential to interact with energies, deities, spirit in a safe and wholesome way. And I say that with respect. And that's the other thing. You have to respect the deities that you approach to work with or that you feel that are approaching you to work with you.
Yeah. I think authenticity and understanding that, for me, it's a deep-rooted respect to nature, to the elements.
I'm sorry, I'm just laughing because I wrote down things that I thought we would talk about. We've talked about nearly all of them, but then something came to me about authenticity and I thought, we're going to talk about authenticity.
There you go. In my line of work, I've never been one to be put into a box of skincare or wellness. That's why I've got the tag Witch of the West End, because I work very much intuitively. I actually created a therapy, intuitive touch. I've worked with crystals for years. I mean, I can remember my very first memory is collecting stones and my dad giving me a stone polisher. My mum said you was never a normal kid, just real odd kid. But that, I think, is just brilliant. All of my family think I'm nuts, but I absolutely embrace that. But I think what is really sad, and this is what I always say in my line of work, is that we are so programmed to think in a linear way that you have to just stop and think about, why did our ancestors revere all of different gods and deities? Why did our ancestors walk the earth? And even like farming, they sort of like worked with the cyclical cycles of the moon and worshipped the sun and worshipped the elements and worshipped, and they still do. Yeah, the farmers still do. And I do colonic hydrotherapies, but when we're doing a parasite cleanse, I always put them on parasite cleanse, making sure that they're 2 weeks in for the full moon, because the full moon, your serotonin levels raise and the parasites come out to play. So authenticity is really, really important.
Yeah, when I did a master's degree, I looked at the connection between compassion and emotional intelligence. And was your level of emotional intelligence linked to how compassionate you can be? And I work in health, and do we need to use EI quotients as a guide for recruitment? Because if we're recruiting emotionally intelligent people and there is a link to compassion, is that worth doing? And I came across Heidegger and Heideggerian philosophy, which is around authenticity, space and time. You know, he was a predictor of his time. He's a difficult character. He was around in the 1930s. He's German. But in saying that, he provides a very, very interesting take on authenticity, in that none of us are truly living an authentic life. We are living something that we've seen or we've heard. I like that, but I also think with you telling me a tale about your childhood, about what, you know, about sorting stones, about collecting herbs and weeds, about having that fascination with, are you living almost through your ancestral authenticity?
Yeah.
Because at that point in our lives, we have no filters.
No, exactly. And
We've
the
not
same,
been conditioned.
exactly. That's come from somewhere. And also in energy medicine, every decision that you make has a imprint in your energetic DNA for the next 4 generations, and also for the next 4
Wow.
generations back.
Wow.
So, and that, when you look at it in a physical terminology, when I'm actually testing kids that may have behavioral difficulties or sleep difficulties, when you're testing these children and they're coming up positive for frequencies that they would never ever be exposed to, I'm talking frequencies like alcohol or recreational drugs that their parents have openly admitted to, and that's energetic. That's not drawing blood and doing a drugs test. We're talking about an energetic frequency that is showing positive from an imprint.
Wow.
But then going back to the craft is all energy. Everything is energy. It's how we interact with it. Yeah.
Yes. And, you know, when we said right at the beginning about going out into nature, that is so important. And nature doesn't have to be up a mountain.
No.
You know, nature can be in the middle of a city in a little square that is lined by 4 trees. Look for shape, listen, get to the point where your awareness is as such that you are picking up that vibration.
Yeah, exactly. My dad passed recently, and there's so many things that have happened around his death and since his passing. But part of his ashes are in a hazel tree where I hug every morning. I talk to the tree, I do a little petition with the tree. And only yesterday, just opposite the tree, there's a silver birch, and there's a natural evil eye looking over the tree. It's just so healing, honestly. It's so healing. But listen, Stephen, I could talk to you for hours about the craft. Thank you so much for coming on. For people that want to follow you, go ahead, tell them your handle, where they can find you.
So I am on TikTok. I am at he_witch. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, I am Alfred and the Boy, which is a completely other side of my life, which is around interiors. Embrace every facet of yourself.
Oh, exactly. But yeah, thank you, Stephen, for coming on. Really appreciate your time. And I will still be checking in on you. And, you know, please do stay in touch. It's been lovely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's it for this week's Good Vibes Only episode. But there's plenty more wholesome, holistic information where that came from. Check out Marie's website, www.mariereynolds.london.com, or follow Marie on socials. For Marie's products, follow at Marie Reynolds London on Instagram and Facebook, and at Marie Reynolds_London on TikTok. You can also follow Marie's day-to-day content on Instagram. Follow at Marie Reynolds_MRL. Thank you so much for listening to Good Vibes Only. If you've enjoyed this episode, we'd love for you to subscribe to and review the podcast wherever you listen to them. And remember to share the episode too. See you next time.